It's like the first day at a new school or a new job. I just hope everyone likes us. Welcome to another D3 Datacast. This is the first football edition of the D3 Datacast. Since this is a new audience, a new topic for us, Matt, let's make sure to get our introductions straight. I'm Zach Snyder, you're Matt Snyder, and we are the D3 Datacast.
We've been enjoying D3 football this season, the first year that our alma mater plays football. We're the D3 Datacast, so we've enjoyed diving into it. Let's dive into it today, Zach.
Let's do it. So we're going to stay in our lane here a bit, Matt. We're not the Around the Nation podcast with Pat Coleman and Greg Thomas. We're not in the huddle with Frank Rossi and JB. Like, they do a great job breaking down the teams and the plays and the results in terms of like the football context. But we're the Datacast, right? So we're going to stay in our lane here. We're going to do a primer on NPI. We're getting into that time of the year where people are really looking at rankings, who's going to be in the tournament, and how does this all work? This is the first year of NPI. It's a new system, but we've been digging into it going back over the summer, really trying to understand it, to be able to replicate it. And along the way, even though this is the first year, Matt, we've been able to dive in and take that replication, apply it to how previous years would have played out. And so we can learn from some history, even though this is year one. We're going to go through all of that today. Go back to episode 83 of the D3 Datacast if you want like the hour and a half version of the deep dive into NPI. But we're going to start just a couple minute recap of that. We're going to condense it down to the nitty gritty because it's going to serve as a foundation for how we want to move forward, making sure that the D3 football audience knows what they need to know heading into NPI season.
And Zach, I cannot emphasize what you said enough. Don't come here to know what's happening on the gridiron. Our grids are spreadsheets, so this is the place to be here. All right, so Zach, starting off, like you said, you plugged episode 83. We went all through NPI. We tried to dive deep into the system. We primarily used a basketball context because that's more what we are familiar with. You can come to us to learn about what's going on the basketball court. That is fine. But just to go over some high-level things that we covered in that episode as well in a more football context. As a reminder, we're moving away from a system that had discrete buckets of winning percentage and strength of schedule and results versus regionally ranked opponents and a specific measure of head-to-head competition and common opponents. That is the old system. It's going away. The new system, as we're finding out, the NCAA is rolling out their dashboards. The new system is NPI, and that contains a winning percentage portion, a strength of schedule portion, a different strength of schedule, but still a strength of schedule portion, and a quality win bonus. So we're trying to see how many games did you win, who did you play, and we're trying to give some extra credit to those good wins, those quality wins. Everything in the new system is rolled up into this single number, the NPI, NCAA Power Index, and that's how like these regional rankings are going to be done, which are kind of meaningless at this point. But the whole NPI ranking is just a single number. That's what teams are going to be selected for the at-large bids into the NCAA tournament. And the seeding, to the degree that that exists, will also be done by NPI. And then, of course, geography has a lot to say in Division III. But we're going to use the NPI number for selection and seeding, and that's it. Just as far as how does the formula framework, each sport committee can tweak the NPI framework a little bit to fit their sport. So some of the dials that they have access to have to do with the ratio between winning percentage and strength of schedule. I have the football dials on the screen here. Winning percentage is 40% and strength of schedule is 60%. They can tweak how much weighting you get for a home win or an away loss, or a home loss or an away win. You can also tweak the level, the opponent quality at which you start getting quality wins. Currently, it's set at 54, so opponents with an NPI above 54 will yield a quality win bonus for if you can defeat a team that is that strong. The quality win bonus multiplier can also be set. That scales how much extra credit you get for those quality wins. You could theoretically tweak different amounts of credit for overtime wins. The football committee, most committees have not selected anything there, so it's 100-0. If you win in overtime, you get full credit. If you lose in overtime, you get no credit. And I think that's going to be fairly typical for most sports. And there's also a minimum win bonus. So in general, in NPI, minimum win threshold. So in general, in NPI, losses that would have helped your NPI kind of get canceled out of the equation, or wins that would hurt your NPI get pushed out of the equation, except you have to keep at least this number of wins. So at least 5 wins have to stay in your schedule before you can drop wins against lesser quality competition that maybe would hurt your score. We know in the old system, if you played bad teams with a bad SOS, even if you got a win, it would drag down your SOS and it'd almost be not worth it. So NPI tries to drop those games, but it says, hey, let's make sure everyone has at least 5 countable games here before we start dropping. So that's kind of how the system works. Let's go over a little bit of an example here, if we can. So let's say your opponent that you're playing has an NPI of 59 and you beat them. So here's how the calculation would go. You get 100 for the winning percentage because you won that game, times that 0.40 dial that we see in the winning percentage strength of schedule ratio. So those get multiplied together, and then added to that is the opponent's NPI. That's the SOS portion for the game. So that's 59 times that strength of schedule dial ratio. So that's 0.6, as we see above. Those two pieces get multiplied together. Plus, you get the quality win bonus, which is the opponent's NPI of 59 minus that base value of 54 that we see above in the dials table. And you multiply that by the QWB multiplier to get your quality win bonus. You add kind of those 3 components together, the winning percentage component, the strength of schedule component, and the quality win bonus, and you get a game NPI. In this example, it would be 76.65. So you beat a team with an NPI of 59. That game winds up with a 76 NPI, a game component NPI for you. And if you kind of do a weighted sum of all of your game NPIs and you divide by your weighted games played, then that's what your average NPI, your total NPI would be for the season would be. And just to clarify, you can't really calculate that directly because everyone's NPI changes after each game, and that affects everyone you play. So you have to run this calculation, get an answer, plug those answers back in, and run it over and over again. I do it about 60 times, and it gets me really, really, really close to the NCAA's numbers. But you could iterate that, and it gets fractionally closer and closer every time that you try to do that iteration. So it coalesces around kind of like a harmonic number for each team, and that's the NPI value that you get. So that was a fast overview. I did go into more in depth back in episode 83. So if you're looking for a little bit more of an example, I show a team schedule, again, from the basketball side of things, but that's how things work. And that was kind of the fast version of how it plays out.
And a couple important caveats here, Matt. Explaining the system that we have here with NPI is not the same as advocating for it. I know there's been a lot of controversy just in the entire Division III community because this is being applied across all team sports. There's been a lot of controversy about the system itself and about the process that played out to put it into place, and the fact that we're maybe getting this a year ahead of when a lot of people were comfortable with. And so this is a reminder not to shoot the messenger. In this case, we're the messenger. We're not casting any sort of value judgments on NPI itself. We're taking the perspective of this is what we have, and trying to offer our understanding of it, and that's not the same as necessarily advocating for it.
Yes, exactly. We're not trying to cast a value judgment whether you love the new system or hate the new system. That's not what we're talking about today. Is it the right system for football or not? We're just talking about trying to explain, as people who have done the math, how it works and what we will see here, kind of from here on out as they release the data to us.
Okay, so that's a lot of nitty gritty, but Matt, we felt like it was important to go through that, both just to summarize what we had gone through in over an hour and a half episode back in episode 83, but it sets the foundation for what we want to talk about next. I alluded to the fact that there's a bit of history we could learn as this process did play out. The individual sport committees, we understood, were looking at the past 3 years of results, and as they were tweaking the dials to determine where they ultimately wanted to set them, they were looking at how that would impact what the calculations produced for those 3 years. So the dials have been set, Matt. you've got a system up and running. We can replicate that. So um, just want to take a look at what we're calling the historical results here, because as we can see, taking a look here, like the number one NPI, whether you're looking at 2021, 2022, or 2023, right? It's very consistent, right around kind of that 78 to 80 mark. There's a lot of talk now about being a top 8 team because the current bracketing principles protect the top 8 seeds. So to get in that number 8 spot, it's been quite consistent in like the 74, right around 75 range for your NPI score. And then of course the all important Pool C cut line. With the expanded tournament, there will be 12 Pool C bids. If you applied that same cut line to the previous 3 seasons, that comes in right around an NPI of 64. And then just to bookend things, the last ranked team by NPI is around 17 and a half. So I know that doesn't really mean a lot, but again, you made reference to the fact that in this NPI system, it's been designed where you can't get really helped by losing or hurt by winning. So taking a look at like what does it look like for a top ranked NPI score? What does it look like for a bottom? Because that lets us just do the calc that you went through before to take a look at some other examples. So for this example, let's say you lose to an opponent with an NPI of 79, right? So go back to that top line. That's about what we would expect like the top ranked overall NPI team to be. Go through that game calculation, you get a game NPI score of 47.4. Now, let's say you beat the last ranked team in NPI. We can see from our faux historical results. Let's call that an NPI of 17.5. You run through the little calculation for your game NPI. Had you beaten that team, and you get 50.5. So this is just an example. Losing to the number one team is not going to be better for your NPI than beating the absolute worst ranked team. However, if we're talking about tournament viability and we're looking at that Pool C cut line where we want to end up with an NPI of 64 or better, beating the last place team and earning yourself a game NPI of 50.5 is not going to get you where you want to be when you want to end up at 64, right? So yes, it's better to beat the last place team than to lose to the top ranked team, but ultimately for your resume, beating the last place team is not going to be beneficial.
And if you did beat that top ranked team, you would get some heck of bonus points for that. So it might be worth it to play a really good team and risk losing a little bit because you might want to get those bonus points.
Absolutely. And if that's your one loss and someone else has a one loss against the number 100 ranked team, well, that's going to be to your advantage because your game NPI for that one loss will be much better than the team who lost to the number 100 team, whatever. So that's another feature, I guess, if you want to call it benefit, whatever. I'll just say for our purposes here, a feature of NPI that it's there's credit given all the way up and down the rankings for wins and losses. All right, so hopefully that's a little bit helpful, but ultimately I know, if you're like me, you're saying, okay, you want to get an NPI of 64 or better. That doesn't really mean anything. There's not a lot of context here. So let's kind of apply the historical results in another way here. So let's look at what do the top 8 teams look like, right? So we know from the previous slide, historically, kind of between like the 75 to 80 range is where the top 8 teams typically come in. And in each of the previous 3 seasons, had you applied the 40 team tournament and the NPI results, the top 8 teams would all be undefeated. So we did not actually see any one loss team be able to jump into that top 8. For Pool C, it's a little bit of a different picture. 2021, 7. If you looked at a 12 team Pool C in 2021, that would have been 7 one-loss teams and 2 5-loss teams. Same thing for 2022, 7 one-loss teams, 5 two-loss teams. And in 2023, it would have been 8 one-loss teams and 4 two-loss teams. So important to note here, in those 3 years, no 3 or more lost teams would have been in the tournament by Pool C. Now, another caveat to add here, is the closest team was the 2022 Hope team that went 6-4. So had they been a 7-3 team instead of a 6-4 team, it's very likely they would have been in. So if we apply NPI to the previous 3 seasons, we don't see that a 3 or more loss team did make it. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that a 3-loss team could not make it, because I believe with that Hope team, had they been 7-3 instead of 6-4, they probably would have been in a 40-team field with 12 teams in Pool C. So hopefully that eases some anxiety. Maybe there's some viewers in Wisconsin who are a little bit nervous seeing that a 3-loss team wouldn't have made it. And again, also important to note, when we're talking 3 losses, we're talking about games played between Division III teams.
Yeah, we're obviously not counting NAIA games or Division II games in the results. Win or loss, it's not included in the NPI, so it's only Division III games. And Zach, yeah, I'd like to highlight again, just because we hadn't seen a one-loss team in the top 8 in the last 3 seasons, we're not saying that's impossible. Maybe if you were 7-1 against a monster schedule, you could have been. We're just saying that we did not see that in the historical data that we were looking at, and that we have heard that was what the committees were looking at kind of the last 3 seasons. And as you called out, same thing with 3+ losses. Very possible we see one of those teams. It could be a WIAC tape team this season. We haven't run all of the scenarios on that to see if they could get in, but just it's a lot less likely the more games you lose that you can be ranked highly in NPI, given the way the calculation works. And if you're at 3+ losses, you're very uncomfortable going into the final weeks of the season. You're watching these NPI results come out down the road here. You get very uncomfortable sitting there at 3+ losses if you're hoping for a Pool C berth.
So hopefully that adds some information and some context here over the stretch run here in the Division III football season as this sort of takes shape. Hey, if you're a fan of a team who has 3 losses, it's dicey, right? Or you're a fan of a team that has playoff hopes and you've got 2 losses, well, taking that third is probably a pretty big deal. So interesting to try to learn some of the historical results here in year 1. Hopefully that helps set some expectations and some context here as we actually see the real year 1 play out.
So, Zach, what we expect to see in the coming weeks will be the regional rankings being rolled out on the NCAA.com page, just like we had seen in the past. The same page that we would go to wait for the regional rankings being released once the dates hit, where they start being released weekly. I think we've already seen it in sports like field hockey, and I think men's and women's soccer have released them this way or are about to. I'm forgetting now as we record what we've actually seen, but it will look not exactly like this. This is my data, not the NCAA's data, but they will go like Region 1. They will list the top 7 teams by NPI, and they will give their NPI score, and then they will go to Region 2 and kind of do the same thing. Of note on the screen here, I have removed NESCAC from the regional rankings. I believe in previous years they had been removed from the regional rankings because that was kind of like a selection tool. And NESCAC teams are still generating NPI numbers behind the scenes, even though they choose not to participate in the tournament. Those NPIs do exist, but I'm just assuming for these purposes they're being pulled out. Who knows? We'll have to see if they are added in to the regional rankings or not. We'll have to see. In my mind, though, we will see these regional rankings. I don't think they provide any value at this point, besides maybe kind of just comparison between maybe yourself and the conferences that are generally around you. But there's no regional selection anymore. Or previously we saw, the top team from each region that was eligible for at-large bids being on the board at the same time, and the committee would choose between the top team among those regions. NPI is just a number, so it's just going to pick the top 12 teams in NPI that did not win their Pool A, and those are going to be the Pool C. So kind of interesting, or maybe historically interesting, or putting it in a historical context for regional rankings. But it doesn't factor into the NPI itself anymore. It doesn't factor into the selections. So we will see these regional rankings, but in my mind, it just muddies the water a little bit of as far as where your team stands in the whole picture.
Yeah, my feeling on it is this is going to be carried in forward as just a relic of the past, so a team can say, "Oh, we were number 5, the number 5 team in Region 1," and ultimately that doesn't really mean anything. But hey, if they want to celebrate
Yeah.
being number whatever in whatever region, so be it.
Yeah. And I just kind of myself wonder how many more years are we going to see this regional ranking type of thing versus once we get used to the new system, are we just going to be full bore, like give us an NPI list of the whole country and that's what we're going to see? And I think that's what they are rolling out on the stats.ncaa.org side of things. You'll be able to get reports of NPI, which is the whole country. But on the NCAA.com page where we're used to seeing regional rankings, they're going to just pull those teams out and sort them by region. In contrast to that is the way that we have been displaying NPI on D3Datacast.com all season, which is just 1 through whatever it is, 214 through the whole country. We are assigning, we're listing the teams in order of NPI and listing their overall D3 games played and their traditional record, right? 6-0, 5-1, whatever they are. And then we're showing the NPI adjusted win and loss values. So above that minimum win threshold of 5, teams might start to be dropping some wins from that occasion, a win that might drag their team down. So NPI is adjusting that record to account for only games that it's counting. So we show, and that also includes the win, the home away kind of win loss weighting in there. So you'll start to see fractional wins show up. That's kind of how NPI is seeing their schedule. We of course list the NPI, and then I'm assigning a pool. That's not a pool that the team has earned. It's just kind of their current position of, are they the conference leader? They might be seen as the Pool A. Are they the next kind of 12 in line? They might be seen as Pool C's. That's what I'm showing on the D3 Datacast dashboard, an overall seed of what they might be in a 40-team tournament, and then kind of their plus or minus, how high or low does their NPI need to get, or how low can it fall before they maybe fall out of Pool C range. So the relationship to that last Pool C spot, how much better or worse are they than that? So that's what we've been showing on D3Datacast.com all season. Check it out if you want to see the rankings. I try to update them on Sunday, although I've recently been finding out if I do it first thing on Sunday, my data source doesn't have all of the games maybe all the way through. So I've been trying to run it again later on Sunday to make sure it's catching all the games and getting the NPI rankings as accurate as possible heading into the next week.
And you talked about the 1 through whatever ranking, Matt. As of time recording, we're trying to figure out if it is 240 or 239, we have been accounting for, because it seems that the NCAA currently is counting Maine Maritime, who is playing a grand total of 2 varsity Division III games. So we'll see. That's causing some minor ripples in the data, but that's to be worked out.
Yeah, and we'll start seeing NCAA official data. We'll hopefully get the question cleared up about are they countable or not. But that's, if you see a little bit of discrepancy between our data and what the NCAA has started to show, we think that's basically all it is. We also found a couple of maybe neutral site games that my data had to be tweaked to match the NCAA, but that's pretty much it. At the top, we've been really close, maybe some small decimal numbers difference, and as we get later in the season, I might increase the number of iterations I have just to make sure it's coalescing around the same numbers. But yeah, we've been pretty accurate so far for what we have been calculating, what the NCAA is producing. So we hope that provides a high level of confidence that you can go to D3 Datacast and check kind of the live results on the day after the games are being played. And for basketball season, maybe a daily update is what I'm planning for NPI as well.
So that wraps up our first official football specific episode of the D3 Datacast. Matt, it was a lot of fun. Hopefully the D3 football fans out there will treat us with tender love and care as we make our football debut here. But hopefully that was helpful. And who knows, maybe we'll gain some fans along the way. Special shout out to everyone who we're heading into our 3rd season covering Division III basketball on the D3 Datacast, and we're grateful for support through Patreon from a number of people. You can head to patreon.com/D3Datacast for more information on how you can support us there.
And if you're new and you're not sure you want to support us in that way, or financially you're not able to, just hit the subscribe button. That's a really easy way that will help us out a ton. We're really close to some nice YouTube thresholds here, so we're hoping to get that early on in the basketball season and just help produce content that supports Division III athletics. That's traditionally been basketball for us, but a little bit of football now, maybe more in the future on the d3datacast.com NPI dashboards, maybe some future plans for that. So good things ahead. We appreciate everyone who has supported us. We appreciate our new football friends. It's only our first kind of season here. Don't shove us into a locker or give us a swirly or anything like that. We're the new guys around here. But it's been fun to follow Division III football for us. It's a fun sport. It's a fun level. We love Division III athletics across the board. So shouts to everyone out there in D3 football land. Thanks for having us. And Zach, good job, team.
Good job, team.